Howdy. Welcome to Ausgrave Royalty. I am Justin. We are back in here with another video regarding Bolen's gods and goddesses. Today we are on Apollo. And last time we did Hestia. So be sure and check out that video as well as every other video on the channel, of course. For first timers, this is a channel about covering great ideas. We're going book by book. The channel's new, and so far the subject has been archetypal psychology. In our first season, we went over Dr. Anthony Stevens' book, Archetypes, aptly named, Natural History of the Self, where we talked about the theoretical foundations of archetypal psychology. And in season 2, we talked about the application. So we went from theoretical to practical with Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette's King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Be sure and check that out as well. Now we are here in season 3. We're covering Bolen's gods and goddesses. I don't know what the word is, fresh take, alternative take on the archetypes. These are books probably most out of the 3 seasons that are more for the general audience. The purpose of these, why I chose this set of books, is that I believe that by learning about what Bolen has to say about connecting the archetypes to the Greco-Roman gods and goddesses, that by learning about them, we can learn about ourselves. By learning about ourselves, we can make the unconscious conscious in the Jungian way, therefore increasing self-awareness, therefore increasing the choices you have in your life, therefore probably making your life better for yourself and those around you, therefore making the world better. So, if this stuff sounds a little too corny or new agey, take it or leave it. Always just use what works, basically. I'm just a guy. I'm not an expert. I would call myself an enthusiastic fan of just ideas that I like. I send the flare up. If you like them, great. If you don't, great. While we're in archetypal psychology right now, lots of other books are planned. There's a lot of books out there, a lot of great ideas. I'll never run out of material, and I ain't staying in archetypal psychology forever. But for now, that's what we're doing. So anyway, besides that on the channel, I have a comedy video that comes out every Sunday. Hopefully y'all have been enjoying those. Check out the channel videos, and you'll spot those. Literally, joke of the week is in the thumbnail. What else? Once in a while, I started doing pop culture videos. I did one on White Lotus season 2, drawing themes from that and tying them to archetypal psychology. Yeah. My hope is that y'all comment down below, and these videos are really conversation starters. So feel free to comment down below what y'all think about all this. Again, for first-timers, Bolen is writing in the 80s, and she's using terms like patriarchy and feminism. They're pretty charged in 2022, 2023, in the modern times, basically. And I doubt what they mean now carried the same connotation as what they meant then. I was just watching an interview with Warren Farrell, who is one of my favorite people of all time, who was, when he began his career in being basically the ultimate diplomat between the genders and in the gender war, so to speak. He actually was part of the feminist party with Gloria Steinem. And yeah, he was their spokesperson, and now he speaks for men. And That just goes to show where things have gone, by the way. Anyway, so there's some like, I don't know, generational differences here, but that's not the focus of this material. Another not focus of this material is the mythological side. While we will talk about that as it relates to the archetypal psychology, it's solely to inform the psychological aspect, not to be a study of the mythology of each god or goddess on its own. That would be way out of scope for my purposes here. Another thing is, when we study gods and their characteristics, women should be able to identify with those traits, given that, so the theory goes, we all have all of the archetypes. And there's the anima and the animus, how the masculine is informed about the feminine and the feminine informed about the masculine. And that's how, I as a man can identify with Hestia, who we covered last time. Because, so the theory goes, I have an anima, which allows me to take on and identify the feminine aspects within myself. Because we both have both genders have masculine and feminine, right? Anyway, so throughout, we're talking about Apollo here, and Apollo obviously is a god, and you might recognize traits within yourself as a woman from this male god, and yeah, so that there could be value there. Any other disclaimers? I think that's it. I think we can get into it. All right, I'm looking at my notes. So the last god we covered was Hades, and now we're moving on to Apollo, the first of what Bolen calls the favored sons. And this refers to the fact that Zeus favored them. Quote, Apollo and Hermes were mythologically comfortable in Zeus's sky realm. As god of the sun, Apollo drove his chariot across the sky. As Zeus's messenger, Hermes could freely and easily travel to the top of Olympus. These two gods, like Zeus, are associated with emotional distance and mental activity. As archetypes, they are the two most at home in the realm of the mind. When we hear about Apollo, and it makes sense that he's close to Zeus, of course. We talked about in that video how Zeus and now Apollo, in my opinion, share a lot of aspects of Moore and Gillette's king that we talked about last season, the king archetype, that being of king, warrior, magician, lover. King is the generative aspect. It's the lawmaker. It's what creates the space for things to happen. Without a king, someone would have no boundaries. And their world is very small, and they have no real vision for their life, so a lot of parts of them aren't mobilized, and basically their life will not really thrive. More on that in those videos in the last season. But yeah, basically the king archetype seeks to make order out of chaos. Order, which is a necessary and sufficient condition for the other archetypes to thrive. And when we talked about Zeus, they're basically, they represent Zeus and now Apollo, and I suppose Hermes to a lesser extent comparatively, represent kind of the mainstream, the status quo, like the keeping up with the Joneses. They are the Joneses, that they are mainstream success, money, status, prestige, legacy, all those like the classical American dream kind of things. And having been through the manosphere, it's kind of what I think of as what's being called in like red pill circles as the high value man, like has a network, like only associates with powerful men, cultivates their status, cultivates a powerful network. These people care about power and influence, and exerting that power and influence to get the upper hand in some way. And this is distinct from what we talked about with Hades, who just doesn't fit the mainstream of like wanting those things, not wanting money or any of that, but instead cares about their own subjective state, about making their way in the world in a highly individual way, which can alienate yourself from society. That's the distinction here. But Apollo is part of that, of what Bolen calls the good old boy network. So let's see, looking at my notes. Quote, Bolen says, he fits easily into the role of a corporate man who can be second in command without feeling the resentment or chafing at the bit that a man who is archetypally a father or a king in need of having his own kingdom might feel. Because of his emotional distance, he can play politics like a game and do well against others who become emotionally caught up in it. He may not win the top position, however, because he appears cautious and doesn't inspire others to see him as a chief. Yeah, he, like where Zeus wants to be at the top, Apollo just wants to be good at the game, more so. So she says, as an archetype, Apollo personifies the aspect of a personality that wants clear definitions, is drawn to master a skill, values order and harmony, and prefers to look at the surface rather than what underlying appearances are. The Apollo archetype favors thinking over feeling, distance over closeness, objective assessment over subjective intuition. Right, again, this reminds me of like the high value man kind of archetype. Like, don't be emotional. You know, being emotional signals low value to women. Yeah, if you're looking for connection or intimacy, it's seen as weak. Just, seek money, prestige, and power so that, so you can replace your woman at the drop of a hat, and that will make her stay, kind of thing. Like, I'm paraphrasing it here, but yeah, just it's a very kind of cold, distant, calculating over feeling kind of paradigm. And again, when we talk about Apollo or any of these archetypes, these are caricatures, kind of. Nobody's ever going to be a pure Apollo. All of us have many different archetypes within us. And that's why sometimes decisions can be tough to make, because we've got different parts of ourselves that are trying to pull us in one direction or another. And archetypes you could think of as just personifications. But these gods and goddesses are not arbitrary. They were a big part of the Greco-Roman culture, and they have certain characteristics which come from their mythology that they embody for a particular reason. But someone can be like very Apollo. And if you recognize these qualities within yourself, you might recognize the historical and mythological tradition those kinds of impulses are rooted in. So the theory goes. Apollo was Zeus's favorite son, and next to Zeus, the most important Greek god. The favorite son archetype appears untarnished by pain and struggle. Apollo, whose appearance of virility and nobility gave him the look of a hero, was opposed to acting the part. Specifically, he would not be drawn into a duel, unlike heroes in this culture, from the Trojan War to the quick draw shootout in the Western cowboy movie. Moreover, Apollo was in he refused sorry, I'm mixing up my notes here. He actually refused the hero Hercules help through the Pythian. Sorry, I have a lot of typos in my notes. Basically, Apollo values prudence, avoids physical danger, is unrivaled by emotions, and prefers being an observer. This is the profile of a sideliner, not a hero. So yeah, basically, unlike Achilles, unlike Hercules, he doesn't want to get in the fray. He doesn't feel squeamish about being. He's more of a strategist, not a warrior, right? So let's talk about Apollo the man. Bolen has these sections on the gods and goddesses about, like I mentioned, a caricature. Like this is kind of like a short well, not so short. No, it's like a little biography of like what a highly Apollo individual would be like. And there could be an Apollo woman if, she had these qualities at the forefront of her personality. So Apollo the man. So a man who resembles Apollo ordinarily finds it easy to be in the world because he's part of that mainstream. He has qualities that made gaining approval from others and achieving success quite likely. However, difficulties and deficits may arise in his relationship, in his relationships and in his life. The Apollo child is usually sunny in disposition, pun intended. Apollo had the chariot with the sun. Yeah. Typically, he is extroverted in attitude, and being curious and inquisitive, he enjoys looking around at the world. He likes the elevation of being a baby in a backpack. He wants to know the names of things. Never much of a dreamer, he doesn't indulge in fantasy. Others often want him to be their best friend, but he often doesn't have a favorite, special friend, which is characteristic of his emotional distance. As the various Little League sports come along, he may do well or even excel. He seems to have a built-in clock and knows what he needs to do today and what will be due tomorrow. He's like a self-help kind of grind kind of personality right from the start. In the Apollo son is a success in the making, a positive reflection on his parents, and an achiever in a culture that values accomplishments. He is used to being in the limelight of parental pleasure, which is the brightness cast about him. This is the traditional position of an Apollo boy, especially the firstborn son in a patriarchal culture, expected and able to carry out the traditions of the family, that is, to live up to his father's will. On the flip side, this comes with immense pressure to continue performing. These reminds me, like this Apollo kid kind of reminds me of the kids in Dead Poets Society. And if you've seen the movie, if you haven't, stop watching this video and go watch that movie. Hell, even if you have seen it, you should probably go and rewatch it. If you do that, though, be sure and like and subscribe. That's my only ask. But all joking aside, like, it's a prestigious institution that they're at. Thus, if your natural disposition was to want to succeed and compete in that kind of way, of course you're in your right environment. But if you want to like be an actor in a play, for example, and you have a very Zeus father, hypothetically, that has expectations for you, your life can be quite intense. So, As a child with exceptional talent and the will to excel for himself, the Apollo child thrives when learning is a game to be mastered, and when the greatest satisfaction is personal mastery of love of what he is doing. In these early years of manhood, if he is able and not handicapped by anxiety, he will excel at repeatedly reaching the goals he aims for. Good grades, class offices, honors, and awards, and scholarships are all prizes that go to young Apollos. He works hard and uses his time well, managing to get good grades, excel at extracurricular activities, and holds a part-time job. These early years of an Apollo flow unusually smoothly. The Apollo man is at a distinct advantage when it comes to work. Doing well at work comes easy for him because he has an inherent ability to focus on a task and doesn't mind practicing until he masters something and to see the end product of what he's doing. Apollo men often go into professions that take years of education and have the ability to set long-term goals. He seeks the approval of men in positions of authority and carries out their directives easily. He is the ideal organization man. And Apollo was the archer, right? Aiming at long-term goals. He is often attracted to independent, competent, and attractive women who are a complementary match. He likes working with the same kind of woman as well. However, a relationship with him often doesn't have much emotional depth, for he prefers to maintain his usual emotional distance. Consequently, the woman in his life may decide that theirs is a brother-sister relationship and may reject him as a lover. I have in my notes here, sounds like the friend zone. Yeah. In the Apollo man. Oh, sorry. So the Bolen. This is from Bolen. Yeah, everything is, but this in particular. The Apollo man isn't much of a lover. In his everyday life, the Apollo man doesn't spend much time having erotic thoughts. He doesn't mentally undress women he sees or spend much time indulging in torrid fantasies. His instinctual, sexual, and sensual dimensions are his least consciously developed aspect, and as such, it is usually left out of mind. He lives in his head rather than his body. The Apollo man is clearly a good catch in any matrimonial sweepstakes. Marriage was a step made with the same consideration as the choice of the college and the initial job offer. Passion and impulse were not the deciding factor. The good match was. Their marriage works very well for both of them. Each keeps in touch with the other's schedule. They run the household as smoothly as an office. They have healthy, regular sex with the same intensity and satisfaction as in having a successful dinner party or a good workout at the gym. However, the marriage will be far from smooth if an Apollo man marries a woman who wants substance rather than form, basically appearances, who needs emotional depth rather than the security of an enduring relationship. So Apollo men are usually good or neutral fathers in their children's lives. They are consistent and even-handed in their behavior. They set standards that are fair, and they may even set standards that are fair, which and impart mottos to live by to their children. However, distance is the common difficulty, as the Apollo man is likely to be absorbed in his career and will leave the realm of the household to the wife. He doesn't cuddle his children either, and if he ends up holding his baby, that will be because his wife put the baby in his arms until he and the baby bonded. Just looking at the time here, I'm running out of time. As usual, I took too many notes. Let's talk about some psychological difficulties. Individuals who resemble Apollo have difficulties that are related to emotional distance. We talked about that. Communication problems, inability to be intimate, and rejection. Problems may be also connected to Apollo's lofty status, which contributes to narcissism and arrogance. As sun god, Apollo was above it all when he looked down on Earth from a distance. The Apollo man characteristically also maintains a distance by avoiding entanglements. When emotions come into the conflict, he withdraws. It's not worth fighting over. So, I have a part of the video just about my reaction to Apollo and how I may see him in my own life. I didn't get to all my notes, sadly. If y'all want to hear more, let me know in the comments. Of course, buy the books for the full set. I've been running out of time consistently, so going forward, I need to probably revise my approach and make it more concise. So I apologize for that, but yeah, yeah, let me know in the comments below what y'all think. But before the video, yeah, in these last few minutes, I kind of want to go over my thoughts. In terms of Apollo, I've definitely embraced Apollo at points in my life, like in school. Like I used to think grades were everything. Of course, when you leave school, you figure out it's kind of like a microcosm. It's not the real world. It's like Hogwarts. You think everything at Hogwarts matters, but then you graduate and there's like the wider world and all that. To be honest, I never cared about prestige or anything like that. I just wanted to make good grades. Looking over my notes here. Yeah. Apollo conjures the alchemical phrase being overcooked to me. And I don't have time to get into all the details here. Check out my video on alchemy from the first season. It's like transformation, initiation, and alchemy. I think that's the title of the video. But in it, I talk about the prima materia being cooked, which is what leads to change. And it's within a sealed container. Hermes being the god of boundaries and seals. Seals are boundaries, which is why Hermes is kind of an alchemical symbol. But things can be overcooked. Like there can be too much at play for change to be healthy. And Apollo is someone who like drank the Kool-Aid of the mainstream, who cannot comprehend why anyone would listen to music that's not on the top 10 charts, or read all the New York Times bestsellers, or go with the popular political movement. Why would anyone do anything differently, you know? Why would anyone go outside the mainstream? They're so overcooked with the mainstream, they can't think for themselves. That's my impression of Apollo. And I went through a phase like that, for sure. Let's see. Looking at my notes. Let's see. Yeah. Probably the biggest way I differ from Apollo is the approach to the tie-in with the emotional realm. I'm like deeply emotional. Not that I act on them, but like I feel things deeply, and I respect my subjective existence. Like statistics, while I respect them, if I knew that there was a 32% chance I'd get into a car wreck when I pull out from my apartment because of the history of accidents on that road, would it change my behavior? Probably not much. I would trust in my own abilities and trust in my own subjective existence. You know, it doesn't carry much persuasive value, to an extent. If I were in charge of a domain, it'd be different. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, I have a tie. I crave intimacy, not shallow, prestigious connections, right? So Apollo reminds me of Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed all this. I'm out of time. See y'all in the next one. Comment down below. Bye-bye.